Welcome everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm Lee Archinal from Cyborg Security, and today I'm here with another 30-minute threat hunt video. Today we'll be threat hunting for malware, or more importantly, the behaviors of malware, not so much the indicators of compromise. So we're not going to be using a file hash, we're not going to be using a file name. What we're going to look for are the tasks that the malware actually tries to or does successfully complete. The idea behind that is the malware is designed to do something that should leave a trace. If we can find that trace, if they rename the malware or if they change the code so the hash changes, we're kind of blind. But if we're looking for those behaviors that it's designed to do the same thing over and over, we should be able to find the activity behind it and determine what was actually happening. So we're going to jump to the Hunter platform real quick, and I'll show you how to navigate and how we can pick out our malware, and then we'll work on it. All right, let's go. All right, so once again, the Hunter platform, we got 506 hunt packages. How do we even start? And as usual, I'm going to say let's start with the filters. We're going to drive down, scroll all the way down to threat categories. This is going to give us the best place to start because malware is actually one of the filters. As you can see, we have 66 hits there. So we're going to start there. Now that we have a lot of results, so we have 66 hunt packages, but we also have the threat profiles. So if you're curious of what threats we've categorized, here are the more information on it. And if you click onto it, you should be able to scroll down and get some more information about what's going on, and more importantly, some related hunt packages. So if you're looking for a specific threat profile that we have categorized, like Royal Ransomware, you should be able to just come here, click on it, slide down, get some contextual information on it, and then get provided the related hunt packages. So you don't have to go anywhere else but there. But we're going to actually jump back real quick because we're going to get out of the threat profiles. And we're going to take a look at the hunt packages. There's 66 results. Let's filter on, or let's take another step and filter on something else. And we're going to go on threat names. And we're going to scroll down, and I'm going to pick Lockbit, simply because it sticks out to me. And I created this workshop. It's not designed to be like that. But so we're going to scroll down, and we're going to see what hunt packages we have access to. So as we come down, we see suspicious BCD edit activity, which is boot configuration data. And then we have shadow copies deletion using operating system utilities. So we're going to click that and we're going to dive in and see what's going on. So what this does, or the idea behind this hunt package, and we can scroll down to the description to get a better idea. Normally, to delete backups is a tactic to impact your environment. So if they ransomware you, or if they encrypt all your information, or if they wipe all your information and all the data that you have, then you're kind of a sitting duck. But if you have those backups, you could possibly successfully get back up and running using those backups. But if they delete the backups and then wipe your data, or encrypt it and exfiltrate everything, then you're kind of in hot water. You kind of have to pay the ransom and so on. But this is looking specifically at the VSS admin, or a couple of processes that can be used to delete shadow copies. So we take a look at the query logic table. We see command line A. So this selection looks for process command line, or it looks in the process command line field containing the shadow or delete values. Then we move on to processes. So any of these child processes that are being spawned, PowerShell, WMIC, BSS admin, or BSS VC. And then we look at command line B. So we're once again looking at the process command line field with WMIC, BSS admin, or BSS VC. Now there's a lot of selection going on here. But if we want to really understand what the condition is, we can take a look at the bottom here. So we see condition is command line A, so it has to have shadow delete in it. and processes, so any of these processes, or command line B, so or these values in these fields. So it's kind of giving you a wider net to run this search and get you more data. The idea behind that is if we look super specific, you might be missing things to your left and right. But if we kind of give you a more general, while still targeted approach to the hunt, we'll get more data back, and then we can actually work through the false positives. I would much rather work through false positives than run a query and expect the results that I have in front of me to be true positives while not knowing what other data exists. Just a personal opinion. But we're going to check the research as well. So let's see what's going on here. We see that ransomware such as Sodin no Kibi, I hope I pronounced that right, or Revil, and all these other ransomwares commonly use this command. So they're looking at deleting shadows, many, and then chaining a bunch of other commands together as well. I'm guessing for more impact. We see a lot of delete shadows. We see WMIC shadow copy delete. We see BCD edit. I mean, it goes on. So I think they're just being extremely thorough with destroying your data or your backups. Either way, I digress. We got to find this information or find the data to look through. And first, and as usual, we're going to use Splunk. I'm going to use Sysmon. So we're going to come down here. We're going to jump right into Splunk. All right, so here we are in Splunk. We copy and pasted the search. We ran it over the last 24 hours, and you can see we have some hits. So once again, the idea behind threat hunting is that we're not just running this query and calling it a day. Our job is to find interesting artifacts to pivot on and continue our investigation. I'm going to demonstrate what I mean by pivots. But really what we're doing is we're going to take something in the data and build a query around it so that we can see what's actually happening after or possibly before. And I will say the biggest artifact from here is that I can't spell. As you can see, the bottom three have quite. And then the very top one is actually quiet. So just a little fun fact, I guess an Easter egg for you all. But the idea is we have some hits, and now we're going to pivot off one of our artifacts, not the I can't spell artifact. But the one I'm going to use, and if you've seen or if you watched the hunt for toolkits, I demonstrated how we can pivot off of process IDs and parent process IDs. Now, we took process IDs and we kind of moved to what happened after. This is actually going to be a quick demonstration of how we can take process IDs and use them to find out what happened beforehand. All right, so what we did was I created this pivot query based off of the process ID being 6184. Now, if you take a look at it, I'm looking at the parent image being command.exe, or the parent process ID being and the parent process ID being 6184. So I want to see where command.exe is the parent process and this process ID is 6184. That was the process ID of the first search that we ran, and that's the artifact that we pivot off of. And the next expression or query is image equals command.exe and process ID equals 6184. So basically, I want to see when those two conditions are met at the same time. What this is going to do is it's going to tell me that as a parent process, 6184 must have been, or possibly was spawned by something else. By demoting the parent process ID to the process ID to make it a child, then we can see when these conditions are met, what its parent activity was. So taking a look on this first hit here, we see parent image is command.exe, and parent command line contains command.exe and a bat file. If we come over to the right, we see that the child process is command.exe, and it's at 6184. So we have an idea that this might be related because of the process IDs, but let's continue down that road because we haven't really confirmed it. with process IDs, you gotta be careful with them because the time frame in which you're searching is very relevant. If I search this over like a week or two, I have probably thousands of false positives because process IDs are reused. But if we can take a look at the command line arguments and see what information we have at hand, then we could possibly link them together. So as we scroll down, we see that there's those VSS admin.exe command line arguments that were thrown. As you can see, the logs still stream that my spelling is not there. But that was like the last thing that we saw. So everything beforehand now is still spawning off of that parent process ID being 6184. So the VSS admin delete wasn't the only thing happening. We can see now that there's a ftp.exe involved, parent process ID being 6184 still. We see there's registry information going on. And then we see some more information. We see a reg query itself. Then if we come to the very top, this is where 6184 was actually spawned. So now we have an idea to say, okay, we found their parent. We found 6184's parent, which is 2784. Now, if we would continue backwards, we could possibly find root cause analysis. So if we take a look, so we see parent process ID is 2784. We're going to make this 2784. Copy this. And it's still command.exe, so those values stand true. We're going to skip that. And now we see we took one step backwards to see what was spawning that. And then we see that it's SVC host. We see command. We see a bat file again. We see another bat file. So we keep seeing these bat files, which is interesting to me. And I want to demonstrate how we can link what's happening within a bat file. So we don't, from the logs perspective, we don't have the file at our disposal. So we can't just open up a notepad and look at it. So what we have to figure out is, because a bat file is normally a list of commands or a loop, or it's designed to do something on our machine. So we can figure out, well, what's in there by taking a look at the parent command line arguments that contain .bat, and then looking at their child. So because we have the parent command line argument field, and we have the arguments themselves, we can set the parent to contain .bat, and then the child process to see what actually spawned out of that. So we're going to actually cast a wide net. And when I say that, I mean all we're doing is we are doing an index sysmon. Parent command line contains any bat file. Because we saw one, I wanted to determine if there were others on this machine as well. So what we take a look at, we see the parent image and parent command line. So we see Notepad++ was opened, and it's targeting one of the bat files. So I'm assuming they were either writing it there or modifying it there. But they're using Notepad++ to view it. Then we see command.exe spawning, or command.exe containing checkstatus.bat. We see systemcheck.bat. Then we see upgrade system.bat. So we have all these different bat files, but because we sorted by the parent image and the parent command line arguments, we're able to determine what the child processes are. So if we look at checkstatus.bat, we see one child process that does a reg query and sc.exe. So it's the registry is being queried, which is always interesting. It could be a discovery tactic. Then we come down to systemcheck.bat and we see a lot more. So we see netstack, ping, route, and all this information. So we can now safely assess that within this bat file, these are the processes and these are the commands that are designed to run. And we can scroll down some more, and now we see what's in upgrade system.bat. So it looks like two similar bat files, still discovering information, doing some internal reconnaissance, and most likely this information is going to be communicated with the threat actor so that they can then get a better idea of their next steps. So we have the bat files, and this is event code 1, by the way. So let me actually add that. I'm going to add values, event code as event code. And what this is going to do is it's going to verify and validate that I am working in event code 1. So we've confirmed that. And what that means is that we were only looking at process create information. Now, if a bat file showed up, it had to get there somewhere. And it may be doing other things. We're going to take that technique that I use, and we're going to still use the term .bat, and we are going to search on or table the information of the event codes. So we're looking for specific event codes that are related to bat files. And we see 1, which is the process creates. Then we see 11, which is a file being created, which doesn't surprise me because it had to come from somewhere. So all I'm going to do is focus on that event code 11, and I'm pivoting. Well, that was the artifact I found. So event code 11 being my artifact. We're tabling the target file name as file created by image. So we should see what process is creating these bat files. And we see the image is setup.exe, amateur hour, target file name. The N is not capitalized. That's why we don't see any information. All right, here we go. We ran this query. We're looking for event code 11, so files being created. We're focusing on bat files. So you can see program files x86. We see show third-party license bad. Okay, that seems kind of normal. And then we come down here to James Murphy's download. So we see anydesk.exe, and that is the actual process that is creating these bat files, which seems sketchy and suspicious because, hey, why is AnyDesk even creating these? Why is AnyDesk in the downloads folder? That doesn't really make sense. Normally, if you install a program, it's going to show up in program files or program files x86 directories. So, looking at not just the artifacts, but reading the data and trying to understand what this situation is really important when you're moving through here. Because if you don't know what's normal in your environment and you go down a path of, I think this is suspicious, the best thing is that you'll learn from your environment. You'll start getting an idea of what's normal, and by knowing what normal is, you'll get an idea of what abnormal looks like, which is important as well. But if you start to take a look at the information and the data that's in front of you, it might start making sense. You'll be able to pick out what's suspicious. Once again, looking at anydesk.exe from the downloads folder is kind of suspicious. So I'm going to jump back to the beginning because I kind of wanted to round this workshop out. So we see a lot of VSS stuff going on here. And there's VSS services, there's VSS admin. You can see by the different values that are thrown. But once again, this is a pretty specific hunt that's looking for processes being created. So I want to take I want to use the technique where now that we went down a path, we started in a specific place and we went down the path and found the investigation. What I'm going to kind of do is I'm going to take a step back and get really general with my next query. And what I'm looking at is index being endpoint or index being sysmon. So I'm looking at both indexes. I have computer name and computer is the same value, simply because sysmon, the host name or computer name, falls in the field computer, and then in endpoint data, computer name falls, or the host name falls in the computer name field. So once again, we're doing a pretty broad search, looking for anything with the term VSS in it, and we're checking out the event codes. So we have a lot right now. And once again, if you feel like you're overwhelmed with data or you don't know where to go, just stop and breathe and read the data, see what's going on. So we got 4656 and 4663, which we know are noisy in general. Then we see 1, which is the event process create. We 4657, which is registry key information that's happening. I don't know what 4799 is. We're gonna hijack this real quick. We're gonna learn together. What is event code 4799? And by running that query, we can jump into the events, come down here, check the message. A security-enabled local group membership was enumerated. Okay. Now we know. I'm going to have to do some research on that to understand it, but at least we know that exists. So I digress. Coming down to 4104, that is PowerShell script block logging stuff. So I'm really curious about that because why is VSS showing up in PowerShell script block logging? That could be how it was done. No, it can't be because we saw a command.exe. So if we saw in command.exe and now PowerShell is showing up, I want to figure out what's going on here. So we're going to jump over here and grab our next query that we're using. And right now, we're going to figure out the fields together. So we have index equals endpoint, computer name is desktop2bb, then code is 4104, so we're looking at the PowerShell stuff, and term VSS. So let's drop down here and figure out what information we can use. We have the message, and that seems to be about it. Okay, that's all right. We can still do this. So we're going to jump down here. We're going to do stats. We're going to say values. And we're going to say message as message. And we're going to sort it by time. Because I want to separate these events. And using time will actually provide that. Or the time field. All right, so now we have the idea. So now we get a look at what PowerShell script block logging is doing. And why does it contain VSS? And you can see it's in the message. All it says is get service name VSS and then stop service name.vss. And that was a little while apart. But in my opinion, if I see this, once again, it kind of seems like that discovery information where you're saying, well, let me figure out what's going on in this environment. And you said get service. So is VSS running? And then you get a yes or no. And I'm assuming it was yes, because taking a look at the next message, it says stop service, which then kills VSS. Now, I want to know if this was successful, because that's part of our job. Not just seeing this and assuming that, hey, the service was stopped. So we need to find an event code that contains VSS. And we're going to see if we can find it saying service. And let's shoot for stopped. See if that's all contained in one event. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Oh, all right. So we have some more events. We looked up term VSS, term contains service. And, might as well do this. We're going to count by event code. And as always, sort by account. This way, we're going to figure out what event codes we're looking at. That way, we can once again jump into those fields, figure out what's important to us, and then display it on the table as needed. So, as we're driving. All right, so we have 4688, which is process create. We see some more PowerShell script block. Let's jump into here and figure out what's going on. 8224, the VSS service is shutting down due to idle timeout. Okay. We see 4688. A new process has been created. For the command line arguments. And then they're 8224. Here we go. 8225. The VSS service is shutting down due to shutdown event from Service Control Manager. Now, if we can do this right, that was 8225. All right, if we can do this right, we're going to say event code in 4104, which was the PowerShell. Then we're going to say 8225. I want to see, and I'm going to sort it. I'm going to say stats, values, message as message by underscore time again. If we're correct, the two 4104 events should be seen, and then right after the last 4104 event, we should see the 8225. And the reason for that is, that's perfect. Actually, let's add event code as well just to see that. So the idea and the logic is that we see the get service name, then stop service name, and then the 8225, which is the event that says, hey, this was stopped because of a service control manager or an event from the service control manager. There we go. All right, so we see the 1608 create or a script block text. So that actually happened right at the same time, and then it shut down again. That's pretty interesting because we're able to see not in real time, but we can now say this script block text was issued, the stop service, and then we can see that the VSS service name was shutting down. And we could probably demonstrate that a little better if we sort it by not only time, but if we move the event code over here, we can see what's going on. And then what that should do is not only are we sorting by time, but we'll see the event code. If you didn't see, the messages were separate, but they were all on one row. So I want to clean that up a little better, which I did. And now we can see that the unique time. So we see the time of 1608 in both the 8225 and the 4104. I mean, that's really interesting to me. We were able to validate that not only were the backup copies or the shadowed copies deleted, but we were also able to see that this came from PowerShell, and they were also stopping this service. So some different artifacts and different techniques that you can use to pivot through the investigation and really figure out what's going on. So that about wraps this hunt up for looking for malware. Now, I guess what malware did we pick? We picked Lockbit, and honestly, it's not even so much looking for the malware itself, but you can come in and use our threat names that you can click on and filter on as well. You can do it in the tagging. But if the idea is I'm looking for ransomware as a piece of malware and not a specific thing, then you have an idea. Because really, as a hunter, I'm not really worried, is it Lockbit or is it Medusa? I want to see, is this activity happening? Are we possibly getting ransomware? And if that is the case, then we can search for behaviors that are associated with it. Hopefully, if we catch them while they're deleting the shadow copies, we could possibly mitigate the attack and stop them from encrypting all our devices. Well, we're going to wrap up our threat hunt now. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it helped improve your threat hunting skills. Stay tuned for more content from Cyborg Security. But until then, happy hunting.